Next, let us learn how to read data from different files, that is from CSV file, from Excel, from SQL database, and any other file data sources. Once we have imported the pandas library, we can now load data in form of data frames and move on to manipulate and analyze it efficiently. First, we initialize the data. The data we are importing as data frame, that is df is equals to pd.read csv. Then we are going to type the path or the path of the data file and make sure that we have specified the data file type. That is, in our case, we're using CSV. We can also use other types such as Excel and text files. After reading the data, it's always a good practice to make sure that we have displayed the data to ensure we have read the correct data source and view how it appears. We use the df.head to display the first few rows and columns, and we can specify how many we want to display. In this case, let's see, we have 100. We can also display 10, 1 to 10, that is 0 to 9. Then we can also display, let's say 5 rows, but the number of columns remains the same. The number of columns remains the same. Another function that is very important in this case, we can also view the last columns, the last rows in our data, that is using the tail, and we have this from 2507 to 2511. That's the last 5. We can also specify we want the last 15, and there we go. We have the last 15. And another very important function in this case, we may need to know the number of columns and number of rows in our data. We use .shape to get the number of rows and the number of columns. In our case, we have 12 rows and 11 columns. Yeah, just as simple as that. Alternatively, we can, when reading the data file, we can specify whether we skip any rows or any columns. In this case, let's look at the df.csv is equals to pd read csv. Then we specify the data source, that is, we are using this online stores customer data.csv. Then we specify that we want to skip rows, that is 2 rows, and we don't have headers, any header. When we read the data this way, we are not going to display any headers, that is the variable titles, and we are going to skip the first 2 rows. We can also specify that we want to show the headers, that we can just omit that, and yeah, we are going to show the headers when we omit that. And we can also specify we want to skip the first 10 rows, and so basically we can specify the number of rows that we want to skip. We can skip any number of rows. Yeah, and the good news is we can also read the data from online sources, maybe a data set from a website or from our cloud storage. This is also straightforward. Let us initialize the link of the file. This is the link we are going to use for our data. Then we are going to use the same function, that is read.csv, then URL, and display the first rows of our data. This is the same data as before. but now we are reading it from our GitHub repository. We can also specify maybe you want 30 rows, and there you go. We can also specify whether to skip or not to skip any rows, and any other functions that goes with pandas. Then let's move forward to how to write data into CSV file. This is also straightforward, as in we are just going to use the to CSV function. This is the same as read, but now we are going to specify that we want to write this data into the specified file. Note that we are indicating the folder path to where we want to store this data, and the file name, and at the end we are specifying the file type. For example, in this case, we have CSV file and text file. On running this, we are going to save it into our main folder. Then we can read data from text file, and good news is on reading this data, we can also display it just like before. Let's say the first 10 rows, and there we go. We have the same data, but now we read it from a text file. Yeah, it is the text file. We can also read the same data from Excel sheet. In Excel sheet, we are going to use read.excel, and we have the same data as before. As you can see, this is a similar data set. Is the same data. We can also save the data into an Excel file, just as before, by using the to CSV function